The rain hammered against the cracked windshield of my ancient Honda like bullets, each drop a small explosion that made me flinch. My fingers ached from gripping the steering wheel too tight, knuckles white under the dim glow of the dashboard. The smell of grease and cardboard filled the small space. 5 pizza boxes stacked on the passenger seat, their heat fogging up the windows. I could barely see the mansion's iron gates through the downpour, but the address glowed on my phone screen. 1847 Blackwood Estate. This was my 3rd delivery of the night, and my shift had started 6 hours ago. My lower back screamed with every pothole I hit, a constant reminder that I needed new shoes, a better car, a different life, but bills didn't care about dreams. Neither did my landlord, who'd taped another late notice to my door this morning, the pink paper like a slap across my already bruised dignity. I pulled up to the gate, rolling down my window just enough to press the intercom button. Cold rain spattered across my cheek, mixing with the sweat on my temple. "Delivery for Blackwood Estate," I said, my voice hoarse from exhaustion. Static crackled. Then a man's voice, clipped and suspicious. "We didn't order anything." My stomach dropped. I glanced at my phone again, double-checking the address. It was right. It had to be right. "I have 5 pizzas for this address. Large order, already paid for online." More static. A pause that stretched too long. "Wait there." The line went dead. I sat in the rain, engine idling, counting the seconds. Water leaked through the corner of my window seal, dripping onto my thigh and soaking through my cheap polyester uniform. The Bellissimo Pizza logo on my chest was already stained from tonight's earlier deliveries. Marinara sauce from a customer who'd grabbed the box too quickly. Diet Coke from a woman who'd slammed her door in my face when I asked about a tip. I was invisible to people like that. Just another working body, easily replaced, easily forgotten. The gate suddenly groaned open, metal scraping against metal. My headlights caught the shimmer of the driveway beyond. Pristine black asphalt that probably cost more than my entire year's rent. I drove forward slowly, my tires whispering against the smooth surface, past manicured hedges that looked like dark soldiers in the rain. The mansion emerged from the darkness like something out of a Gothic novel. 3 stories of stone and glass, lit from within by golden light that made every window glow like a watching eye. Even in the storm, I could see the wealth radiating from every corner. The marble columns flanking the entrance, the fountain in the circular drive, the luxury cars parked under a covered area to my left, a black SUV with tinted windows, a silver Mercedes that gleamed even in the rain, a midnight blue Bentley that probably cost more than my entire bloodline would earn in 3 generations. I parked near the entrance, grabbing the pizza boxes and my phone. The rain soaked through my uniform within seconds as I ran toward the massive front door, boxes held over my head like a flimsy shield, my sneakers, falling apart at the seams, soles worn so thin I could feel every pebble, slipped on the wet steps. Before I could knock, the door swung open. A man in a black suit stood there, tall and broad with a face carved from granite. His hand rested at his hip in a way that made my pulse quicken. Not casually, but deliberately, like he was ready to reach for something. Behind him, the foyer stretched like a cathedral, all white marble and crystal chandeliers that threw fractured light across walls hung with artwork that probably belonged in museums. "You're soaked," he said, but it wasn't sympathy in his voice. It was observation, cold and analytical. "It's raining," I replied, trying to keep my teeth from chattering. Water dripped from my hair, running down my neck and back. 5 pizzas, as ordered. We didn't order anything," he repeated. But his eyes were scanning the boxes, then me, then beyond me to my car. Looking for threats, I realized. This wasn't just a wealthy household, this was something else. Someone did. I held up my phone, showing him the order confirmation. "Paid online 20 minutes ago, this address." His jaw tightened. He pulled out his own phone, pressing it to his ear. "We have a situation," he said quietly, then stepped aside. "Come in. Don't touch anything." I hesitated. Every instinct told me to run back to my car, to call my manager and cancel the delivery, to get far away from whatever this was. But I needed this job, needed the paycheck at the end of the week, needed the tips that sometimes, rarely, added up to enough for groceries. I stepped inside, The warmth hit me first, then the smell. Expensive cologne, fresh flowers, and something else underneath. Cigar smoke, maybe. Or leather. My wet sneakers squeaked against the marble floor, leaving dark footprints that made me cringe. The man in the suit was speaking rapidly into his phone in a language I didn't recognize. Italian, maybe, or something close to it. Another man appeared from a hallway to the right. This one younger, but with the same dangerous stillness. His eyes fixed on the pizza boxes, then on me, assessing and dismissing me in the same breath. "Where do you want these?" I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. The foyer seemed to swallow sound, making me feel even more insignificant. "Don't move," the first man said, still on his phone. Then, to someone else in the house. "Get him down here. Now." Him. Someone important enough that a mysterious pizza delivery warranted immediate attention. I stood there, water pooling around my feet, feeling the weight of my exhaustion settle deeper into my bones. My shift was supposed to end 20 minutes ago. I still had to drive home through this storm, climb 3 flights of stairs to my apartment, and somehow find the energy to shower before collapsing into bed. Tomorrow I had the early shift at the diner. 6 hours of pouring coffee and dodging wandering hands for tips that barely covered gas money. A staircase curved up from the foyer, grand and sweeping, with an iron railing that looked hand-forged. I heard footsteps descending, deliberate and unhurried, and found myself holding my breath without knowing why. He appeared at the top of the stairs, and the entire atmosphere shifted. I'd delivered to wealthy neighborhoods before, seen men in expensive suits, encountered people who radiated money and privilege. But this was different. This was power, the kind that didn't need to announce itself, that simply existed like gravity or air. He wore all black, dress pants and a shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars that told stories I couldn't read. Dark hair, slightly disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it. A face that could have been handsome if it weren't so hard, all sharp angles and controlled intensity. But it was his eyes that caught me, held me frozen like a rabbit in headlights. They were dark, almost black in the chandelier light, and they looked at me with the kind of focus that made my skin prickle. Not with desire, not with kindness, but with assessment. Calculation. Like I was a puzzle piece that didn't fit the picture he'd assembled in his mind. He descended the stairs slowly, each step measured. The men in suits straightened, their postures shifting from alert to almost reverent. One of them spoke rapidly in Italian, gesturing to me and the pizzas. The man in black didn't respond. He just kept walking until he stood 3 feet away from me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something dark and woody, cedar maybe, with notes of bergamot. Close enough that I could see the faint stubble along his jaw, the thin scar that ran from his left eyebrow into his hairline. Close enough that I felt truly, deeply afraid for the first time all night. "Who sent you?" His voice was quiet, almost soft, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. American accent, but with something underneath. Italian heritage maybe, or time spent elsewhere. "My manager." The words came out shaky. "Someone placed an order online. I'm just the delivery driver. Show me." I fumbled with my phone, nearly dropping it with my cold, trembling fingers. He took it from me, his hand brushing mine for just a second, warm against my frozen skin, and studied the screen. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Anger, maybe. Or recognition. "Marco," he said, not looking away from my phone, "trace this order. Now." The younger man pulled out a laptop from seemingly nowhere, fingers flying across the keys. The man in black handed my phone back to me, and our fingers brushed again. This time I noticed the ring on his right hand. Thick gold with a crest I didn't recognize, worn like a statement rather than decoration. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emma." My voice was barely a whisper. "Emma Reyes. Emma Reyes." He repeated it slowly like he was committing it to memory. "How long have you worked for Bellissimo?" 3 months. "You always work nights?" "I work whenever they schedule me. Days at the diner, nights delivering pizza, weekends at..." I stopped myself. Why was I telling him this? What did my poverty have to do with mysterious pizza orders? "You work 3 jobs." It wasn't a question. I nodded. Something shifted in his expression. too quick to name. Then Marco spoke from behind his laptop. Order was placed from a burner phone, routed through 3 different VPNs, payment from a dummy account that's already been closed. The man in black went very still. That was worse, somehow, than if he'd gotten angry. The stillness was predatory, dangerous, like a snake coiling before it struck. "Someone sending a message," he said quietly. Then his eyes fixed on me again, or setting a trap. My heart hammered against my ribs. "I don't understand. I'm just delivering pizzas." "Open them." "What?" "The boxes." "Open them." My hands shook as I set the boxes on a nearby table, an antique thing that probably cost more than my car, and lifted the first lid. Steam rose from a perfectly normal pepperoni pizza. I moved to the second box, mushroom and sausage. The third. I froze. It wasn't a pizza. Photographs. Dozens of them, scattered across the bottom of the box like obscene toppings. My brain struggled to process what I was seeing. People in intimate positions, faces caught in expressions of pleasure or pain, bodies intertwined. But it was the faces that made my stomach turn. The man in black stepped forward, his jaw tight enough to crack teeth. He lifted one photograph, studying it with an expression that could have melted steel. "Boss," Marco said, his voice careful. "That's... I know who it is." I looked at the photograph he held, a woman. Beautiful in that untouchable way wealthy people often were, with platinum blonde hair and a smile that looked expensive. She was wrapped around another man, not the one standing beside me, in what was clearly a hotel room. The man in black set the photograph down with controlled precision, then opened the remaining boxes. More photographs. And in the last box, a note, printed in block letters. "Your fiancée sends her regards. MV." The silence that followed felt like suffocation. "Get her out of here," he said finally, his voice like ice. But before anyone could move, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the foyer whole. I heard movement, fast, professional, and felt a hand grip my arm, pulling me backward. Then glass shattered somewhere above us, and someone screamed. Gunshots exploded through the darkness, muzzle flashes painting the walls in strobes of yellow-white light. I hit the floor, pizza boxes scattering, my scream lost in the chaos. My elbow cracked against marble, pain shooting up my arm, more glass breaking, shouts in Italian, the acrid smell of gunpowder mixing with the rain-fresh air pouring through broken windows. A hand found me in the darkness, large, warm, impossibly strong. It pulled me up and against a solid body, sheltering me as another round of gunfire erupted. I could feel his heartbeat against my cheek, steady despite the chaos. Could smell that cedar cologne mixed now with adrenaline sweat. "Stay down," he commanded, his mouth close to my ear. "Don't move. Don't make a sound." Then he was gone, and I was alone in the darkness, pressed against a wall, listening to the sounds of violence I'd only seen in movies, metal striking flesh, bodies hitting the floor, someone crying out in pain. The emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in red. I saw him then. The man in black, standing in the center of the foyer with a gun in his hand, perfectly calm as bodies lay scattered around him. His men were securing the perimeter, checking windows, speaking rapidly into earpieces. He turned and found me with his eyes, and something in his expression made my breath catch. Not anger, not fear. Realization. "You," he said, walking toward me. "You saved my life." I didn't understand. I'd done nothing but stand there and scream. "The pizzas," he continued, stopping in front of me. "If you hadn't come, if you hadn't shown me those photographs." He looked toward the shattered windows, where his men were pulling unconscious bodies inside. "They would have succeeded." "Who?" My voice cracked. "The people my fiancé hired to kill me." He holstered his gun with practiced ease. "The people who thought I'd be distracted by her betrayal long enough to leave myself vulnerable." My mind reeled. Fiancé. Betrayal. Hired killers. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. "I need to go," I whispered. "I need to." "You're not going anywhere." His tone was gentle, but absolute. "They've seen you. They know you delivered the warning. Which means as of 5 minutes ago, Emma Reyes, you became the most dangerous person in the city.
What? No, I just deliver pizzas. I don't... You're a witness. Worse, you're a loose end. He gestured to Marco, who appeared at his side. Take her to the safe room. Full security detail. No one gets in or out without my authorization. Wait. I tried to step back, but Marco's hand was already on my arm. Firm but not painful. The man in black stepped closer, so close I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. I'm sorry you got caught in this, Emma. But I'm not sorry you're alive. His hand reached up, brushing a strand of wet hair from my face with surprising gentleness. And I'm going to make sure you stay that way, whether you like it or not. Then I was being guided away, through hallways that twisted and turned, down stairs that descended into the mansion's depths. Behind me, I heard him giving orders in rapid Italian, his voice hard with fury and dark promise. The last thing I heard before a steel door closed between us was him speaking into his phone. Find Veronica, and find Marcus. I don't care where they're hiding. I want them both alive. The lock engaged with a sound like a prison cell closing, and I realized that in trying to deliver 5 pizzas, I just delivered myself into the hands of a man who made kings look powerless. A man whose name I still didn't know. A man who'd just decided I belonged to him. The safe room was nothing like I'd imagined a panic room would be. I'd expected concrete walls and flickering fluorescent lights. Maybe a cot and some canned food. Instead, I found myself in what looked like a luxury hotel suite carved into the earth. Cream-colored walls, soft recessed lighting that didn't hurt my eyes, a king-sized bed with silk sheets in deep burgundy. There was a sitting area with leather furniture, a kitchenette stocked with enough food to last weeks, and a bathroom visible through an open door that was larger than my entire apartment. But luxury couldn't hide what it really was. A cage. I stood in the center of the room, still dripping rainwater onto the plush carpet, my mind struggling to process the last 20 minutes. Gunshots, photographs, bodies on the floor. His hand pulling me against him in the darkness, his heartbeat steady against my ear like a countdown to something inevitable. You're a witness, a loose end. My knees gave out, and I sank onto the edge of the bed, my wet uniform soaking into the expensive fabric. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I pressed them between my thighs, trying to create warmth, trying to ground myself in something physical and real. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. I was supposed to finish my shift, go home, pay my rent. Tomorrow I had the breakfast rush at the diner. Mrs. Patterson always ordered 2 eggs over easy and wheat toast. Mr. Chen wanted his coffee black with exactly 2 sugars. Simple things, normal things. Not this. Not armed men and betrayal and a stranger who'd decided my life was his to control. A soft knock made me jump. The door opened before I could respond, and a woman entered carrying a stack of clothing. She was older, maybe 60, with silver hair pulled into a neat bun and kind eyes that seemed at odds with the bulletproof vest she wore over her blouse. Miss Reyes, she said in accented English. Italian. Definitely Italian. I'm Teresa. I manage the household. She set the clothes on the bed beside me. You need to get out of those wet things before you catch pneumonia. There's a shower, hot water, everything you need. I stared at the clothes without touching them. I need to leave. I have to call my manager. Tell him what happened. Your manager has been informed you had a family emergency. Teresa's voice was gentle but firm. Your phone is being held for security purposes, but you're not in trouble, child. You're being protected. Protected? The word came out bitter. I'm locked in a basement. You're alive. She met my eyes steadily. 20 minutes ago, you walked into the middle of an assassination attempt on one of the most powerful men on the East Coast. The people who orchestrated that attack will do anything to tie up loose ends. This room has 6 inches of steel-reinforced concrete on all sides, biometric locks, and its own air filtration system. It's not a prison. It's the only reason you'll see tomorrow. The casualness with which she said it made my stomach turn. Who is he? The man upstairs? Teresa studied me for a long moment, as if deciding how much to say. His name is Dante Russo, and if you're smart, you'll do exactly what he tells you. She left before I could ask anything else, the door sealing behind her with that same prison sound finality. Dante Russo.
I repeated the name silently, testing its weight. It meant nothing to me, but the way Teresa had said it, with reverence and fear intertwined, told me it should. That I'd somehow missed something crucial about the world I'd been living in, blind to the darkness that moved beneath the surface of ordinary life. I looked down at my hands, still trembling, still stained with pizza grease and rainwater. I could smell myself, sweat and fear and cheap laundry detergent. The contrast between my reality and this room was so stark it felt obscene. Finally, I picked up the clothes Teresa had brought: soft gray sweatpants, a white cotton t-shirt, underwear still in the package, thick socks. Everything in my size, which should have comforted me but instead made my skin crawl. How did they know my size? Had they gone through my wallet? Run a background check in the 15 minutes since I'd arrived? The shower was almost painfully hot, steam filling the bathroom until I couldn't see my reflection in the mirror. I stood under the spray longer than necessary, watching the water circle the drain, wishing I could disappear down it like Alice through the rabbit hole, tumbling back into my own life. But when I finally emerged, wrapped in a towel softer than anything I'd ever owned, I was still here, still trapped. I dressed in the clothes they'd provided, my own uniform abandoned in a sodden heap on the bathroom floor. Without my phone, I had no idea what time it was. Late, definitely, maybe 2 or 3 in the morning. My body ached with exhaustion, but my mind was too wired to even consider sleep. I explored the room instead, opening drawers and cabinets with numb curiosity. Everything was fully stocked: toiletries, medications, even books on a shelf near the sitting area. I pulled one out at random, The Count of Monte Cristo. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was sitting on the couch, the book open but unread in my lap, when the door opened again. Dante Russo stepped inside, and the room suddenly felt smaller. He'd changed clothes, still all black, but a fresh shirt. No blood spatters that I could see. His hair was damp, pushed back from his face, and I realized he'd showered too, washing away evidence of whatever had happened upstairs after they'd locked me away. "You're not reading," he observed, closing the door behind him. "I'm not really in the mood for 18th century literature." A ghost of something, amusement maybe, flickered across his face. "Fair enough." He moved to the chair across from me, sitting with the kind of controlled grace that suggested violence was always one breath away. "How are you feeling?" The question was so absurd I almost laughed. "How am I feeling? I watched people try to murder you. I'm locked in your basement. My entire life just imploded." "How do you think I'm feeling?" "Angry," he said calmly. "Scared, confused, probably wondering if I'm going to kill you." My heart stuttered. "Are you?" "No." The word was absolute, no hesitation. "If I wanted you dead, Emma, you'd already be dead. I don't make a habit of keeping witnesses alive unless I have a reason." "And what's your reason?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his dark eyes fixed on mine with that same unsettling intensity. "You saved my life tonight. Maybe not intentionally, but that doesn't change the outcome. Someone, my fiancée apparently, and her lover, orchestrated an elaborate plan to distract me with those photographs while their team breached my home. If you hadn't insisted on delivering those pizzas, if you hadn't shown me what was in those boxes," he paused, jaw tight, "I would have been upstairs, alone, reviewing security footage of Veronica's infidelity. Easy target. Instead, you were downstairs with me." "Instead, I was downstairs with you," he agreed. "And my men were on high alert because of the unusual delivery. We were ready when they came through the windows." I processed this slowly. So I accidentally foiled an assassination attempt by being too persistent about pizza delivery. Essentially. Something that might have been a smile touched the corner of his mouth, there and gone in an instant, though I suspect persistent is putting it mildly. "Teresa mentioned you work 3 jobs. I have bills." The words came out defensive. "Some of us don't have mansions and armed guards." "No," he said quietly. "You have something much more valuable. You have the kind of determination that keeps you standing when anyone with sense would collapse. You drove through a storm to deliver pizzas to a house that didn't want them, insisted on completing your job even when my security tried to turn you away. That kind of stubbornness." He tilted his head, studying me. "That's rare. Useful. I'm not useful to you. I'm a liability you're stuck with. You're both. He stood, moving to the kitchenette and pouring 2 glasses of water from the filtered tap. He brought one to me, and I took it because my mouth was desert dry. The people who attacked tonight, they failed. Which means they're desperate, sloppy, and extremely dangerous. They know you saw the photographs. They know you can identify faces, connect dots. They'll assume you're valuable to me now, which makes you a target. I set the glass down with shaking hands. You said I'm a loose end. They'll come after me to tie it up. They'll try. His voice dropped into something darker, more dangerous. They won't succeed. How can you be sure? Because you're under my protection now, and I protect what's mine. The possessiveness in his tone made my pulse spike. I'm not yours. I don't even know you. You know I'm the kind of man who people try to assassinate. You know I have the resources to keep you alive when your government won't. You know that 24 hours ago you were invisible to the world, one more struggling worker drowning in bills and exhaustion. He crouched in front of me, bringing himself to eye level. And you know that everything changed the moment you walked through my door. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, that I could go back to my life and pretend this never happened. But the words died in my throat, because I could see the truth in his eyes. Everything had changed. What happens now? I whispered. Now you stay here while I deal with the people who betrayed me. My men are tracking Veronica and Marcus Vitale, her lover apparently, and someone I once called friend. His jaw clenched. The only sign of emotion he'd shown. When I find them, they'll answer for this. And when the dust settles, we'll discuss your future. My future is delivering pizzas and pouring coffee. Your future is whatever I decide it is. He stood, looking down at me with an expression I couldn't read. I'm not a good man, Emma. I've done things that would make you run screaming if you knew the details. But I keep my word, and I protect what belongs to me. As of tonight, you belong to me, not because I want to own you, but because it's the only way to keep you alive. And if I refuse, then you'll be dead within 48 hours. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. Marcus Vitale runs the second-largest operation on the East Coast. He has resources, connections, and no conscience. The moment you leave my protection, you're a loose end waiting to be cut. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall, so I'm a prisoner. You're alive. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. There's food in the kitchen, books on the shelf, a television in the cabinet, everything you need. Teresa will check on you in a few hours. If you need anything, use the phone on the wall. It connects directly to security. I need my life back. He looked at me over his shoulder, and for just a moment, I saw something almost like regret in his eyes. I know, but that life would get you killed. And I've decided I prefer you breathing. He opened the door. Try to get some sleep, Emma. Tomorrow is going to be complicated. Then he was gone, and I was alone again with my thoughts and the oppressive weight of silk sheets and steel walls. I didn't sleep. I lay in that enormous bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence that wasn't really silent. There were sounds if you listened carefully. The hum of air filtration, the distant echo of footsteps above, the almost imperceptible whir of security cameras tracking every corner of the room. I thought about my apartment, probably locked by now, landlord counting the days until he could legally remove my things. I thought about my manager at Bellissimo, wondering why I'd abandoned my shift, the diner, where my morning regulars would sit at empty tables, waiting for coffee that wouldn't come. I thought about the photographs in those pizza boxes, the woman, Veronica, with her expensive beauty and treacherous smile. The way Dante had looked at those images, his expression carved from ice, but his eyes burning with something primal. Betrayal. I understood that feeling. My ex-boyfriend had emptied our joint account and disappeared 6 months ago, leaving me with his debts and an eviction notice. I'd learned then that people could look you in the eye, tell you they loved you, and still destroy you without a second thought. But this was different. This was betrayal with teeth, with consequences measured in bullets and blood. Somewhere above me, Dante Russo was hunting the people who'd tried to kill him, and I was caught in the middle, a random variable in someone else's war. I must have dozed eventually, because I woke to Teresa entering with a tray of breakfast. Eggs, toast, fresh fruit, coffee that smelled like heaven. She set it on the bedside table with a gentle smile that seemed wrong in this place. "How did you sleep?" she asked. I didn't. I sat up, my body aching from tension. "What time is it?" "Just after 8. Mr. Russo wanted me to inform you that the situation is being handled. You're safe." "What does being handled mean?" She didn't answer, just patted my hand with maternal concern that felt grotesque given the circumstances. "Eat something, child. You'll need your strength." After she left, I picked at the food without appetite, drinking the coffee because I needed something to do with my hands. The eggs were perfect, fluffy, seasoned just right. The toast was some artisanal bread that probably cost more per slice than I made per hour. Everything was perfect, polished, expensive. Everything was wrong. I was finishing the coffee when the door opened again. Dante entered, and I noticed immediately that something had changed. There was blood on his shirt cuff, just a spot, easy to miss. But I saw it. His knuckles were bruised, split across 2 fingers. His hair was disheveled, and there was a wildness in his eyes that made my instincts scream danger. "We need to talk," he said. I set down the coffee cup carefully. About the fact that Veronica is dead, Marcus is missing, and you're the only person who can identify the third person in those photographs. He moved closer, and I could smell gunpowder on him, mixed with that cedar cologne. The man she was with wasn't Marcus. It was his brother, Antonio. Which means this goes deeper than a simple affair. My mind struggled to process. She's dead? Car accident. Very convenient timing. His tone suggested he didn't believe it was an accident at all, which leaves Antonio in the wind and me with questions that only you can answer. "I don't know anything. I just delivered. You saw the photographs." He pulled his phone from his pocket, swiping through images. Crime scene photos, I realized with horror. Bodies. Blood. He turned the screen to me. "Is this the man from the photographs?" I looked despite wanting to look away. A man's face, pale in death, eyes open and staring. I tried to match it to my memory of those intimate images, but everything was jumbled, fear making my thoughts thick and slow. I don't know. Maybe? I barely looked at them. Try harder. His voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath. "This is important, Emma." I forced myself to study the
Dark
photograph
hair,
more carefully. Strong jaw, a scar near his left ear, and suddenly I remembered. Yes, that scar. Visible in one of the photographs where Veronica had been kissing his neck. "Yes," I whispered, "that's him." Dante's expression went dark. "Antonio Vitale, Marcus's younger brother and my former business partner." He pocketed the phone. "This wasn't just about killing me. This was about a power play. Take me out, frame it as a crime of passion, and Marcus assumes control of everything I've built." But his brother was sleeping with my fiancée, probably with Marcus's blessing. Create the affair, document it, use it as distraction and motivation. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "It was actually brilliant. If you hadn't delivered those pizzas when you did, I'd be dead, and they'd be dividing my empire." I wrapped my arms around myself. "So what now?" "Now I find Marcus, and make him answer for this, and you?" He studied me with that intense focus again. "You stay with me. Close. Where I can see you. Protect you." "Here? In this room?" "No." He shook his head. "I'm moving you upstairs, to my wing. My bedroom is the most secure location in the house aside from this room, and I need you where I can reach you quickly if necessary." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Your bedroom. You'll have your own space within the suite." "But yes, my bedroom." He must have seen the panic in my eyes because he added, "I'm not going to touch you, Emma. I'm not that kind of man. But I am going to keep you alive, which means keeping you close. I don't have a choice, do I?" "No," he said simply. "You don't. Welcome to my world, Emma Reyes. Try not to die in it." Dante's suite occupied the entire 3rd floor of the mansion, accessible only by a private elevator that required both a keycard and fingerprint scan. I stood beside him in the cramped space, hyper-aware of every breath, every slight movement that brought his arm closer to mine. The elevator smelled like him, that cedar cologne mixed with something darker, more primal. Blood and gunpowder and expensive leather. The doors opened onto a hallway that was more like a gallery, walls lined with art that even I, with my complete lack of education on the subject, recognized as valuable. Old masters, probably, the kind of paintings that belonged in museums, not private homes. Everything was done in dark tones, charcoal grays and deep blues, with strategic lighting that created more shadows than illumination. "This way," Dante said, his hand hovering near the small of my back without quite touching, a gesture of guidance that felt like ownership. The suite itself was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the estate grounds, now visible in morning light that revealed the damage from last night's attack. Shattered glass being replaced by workers who moved with quiet efficiency, bullet holes in the stone facade already being repaired. The room was decorated with the same masculine elegance as the rest of the house. Dark wood furniture, leather chairs, a bed large enough to sleep 4 people comfortably. But it was the security that caught my attention. Cameras in every corner, a panel of monitors built into one wall showing different angles of the estate, a weapons cabinet partially visible through an open closet door. This wasn't just a bedroom, it was a command center disguised as luxury. "Through here," Dante continued, leading me to a door I'd assumed was a closet. It opened onto another room, smaller but still larger than my entire apartment had been. A sitting area with a couch and television, a desk with a laptop, a daybed by the window. "This is your space. Private bathroom through that door, everything you need." I stepped inside, feeling the weight of the cage even though the bars were invisible. The windows, I noticed, were reinforced, thick glass that probably wouldn't shatter even under gunfire. The door had 3 separate locks, all controllable from inside and out, protected or imprisoned. The line seemed impossibly thin. "Teresa will bring your meals here unless I request your presence," Dante said from the doorway. His shoulder leaned against the frame, arms crossed, watching me with that unnerving focus. "You have access to the internet through that laptop, but all activity is monitored, for your protection," he added, as if that made it better. "Don't try to contact anyone from your previous life. It puts them at risk." "How long?" My voice came out rough. "How long do I have to stay here? Until Marcus Vitale is dead or behind bars? Whichever comes first." He pushed off the doorframe. "I have business to attend to. Marco will be stationed outside if you need anything. Don't leave this suite without my permission." Dante. His name felt strange on my tongue. Too intimate for what we were. Captor and captive. "Last night you said I saved your life. But it was an accident." I didn't know what I was delivering. "Does that matter?" He tilted his head. "The result is the same. You're the reason I'm still breathing, Emma. That creates a debt, and I always pay my debts. I don't want anything from you except my freedom." Something flickered in his expression, almost like pain, there and gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "Then you want the one thing I can't give you." "Not yet." He moved toward his own room, then paused. "For what it's worth, I am sorry. You don't deserve to be caught in this." "But I am caught." "Yes," he agreed quietly. "You are." The door closed between us, but I could hear him moving around on the other side. The rustle of clothing, the splash of water, the low murmur of his voice as he spoke to someone on the phone. Italian again. Too rapid for me to catch even if I understood the language, but the tone was unmistakable, cold, calculating, deadly. I sank onto the couch, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. Through the window I could see the estate stretching out in manicured perfection, gardens that probably required a team of groundskeepers, a pool covered for winter, buildings in the distance that might have been guest houses or staff quarters. Walls surrounded everything, topped with cameras and what looked like motion sensors. Beautiful and deadly, just like the man who owned it. The laptop beckoned from the desk. I moved to it almost against my will, opening the browser and immediately searching for Dante Russo. The results made my blood run cold. Hundreds of articles, news reports, FBI investigations. The words leaped out at me. Alleged organized crime, suspected money laundering, witnesses disappeared, connection to multiple homicides. And photographs. Dante in expensive suits leaving courthouses. Dante at charity galas with beautiful women on his arm. Dante's face in FBI wanted posters that had been withdrawn after witnesses recanted their testimony. I was reading about a ghost, a man who moved through the world leaving destruction in his wake, but never quite getting caught, protected by fear and money and violence. My hands shook as I scrolled through articles about his family, the Russo crime family, one of the oldest on the East Coast, with connections to everything from construction to shipping to casinos. His father had been gunned down 5 years ago, and Dante had taken over the empire at 28. Since then, he'd consolidated power, eliminated rivals, expanded territory, and I was sleeping 20 feet away from him. A soft knock made me jump. Teresa entered with a gentle smile, carrying bags that she set on the daybed. "Mr. Russo asked me to bring you proper clothing. I've estimated your sizes, but if anything doesn't fit, just let me know." I stared at the bags. Designer labels I recognized from window shopping I could never afford. "This is too much. Mr. Russo insists you be comfortable." She began unpacking. Jeans, sweaters, dresses, undergarments still in their packaging, shoes in multiple styles. Everything expensive, everything my size. He also wanted me to tell you that Dr. Chen will be visiting this afternoon for a health check. Standard procedure. I'm not sick. You were in shock last night. Mr. Russo wants to ensure you're physically well. Teresa's hands were gentle as she organized the clothes in the closet. "He may seem harsh, child, but he takes care of what's his." There was that phrase again. What's his? "I'm not his," I said firmly. "I'm just someone who got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time." Teresa looked at me with something like pity. "You're someone who saved his life. Whether you understand it or not, that makes you his. In his world, debts like that don't go unpaid." She left me alone with new clothes and the weight of her words. I spent the next few hours in a strange fugue state, neither fully awake nor asleep. I tried on the clothes because I had nothing else to do. Everything fit perfectly, which was somehow more disturbing than if they'd been wrong. I showered again, using products that smelled like lavender and vanilla, trying to scrub away the feeling of being watched even though I was alone. The laptop called to me repeatedly. I researched Marcus Vitale, finding articles about his own criminal empire, his rivalry with Dante, the tentative peace between their organizations that had held for 3 years. I found Veronica's obituary. A car accident, just as Dante had said. Her vehicle found at the bottom of a ravine. No other details. No mention of foul play. But I remembered the way Dante had said, convenient timing. And I wondered if the accident had been quite so accidental. Doctor. Chen arrived at 3, escorted by Marco, who waited outside the door while the doctor examined me with professional efficiency. Blood pressure, pulse, a check of my pupils. She asked about sleep, appetite, any physical pain. I answered mechanically, aware that Marco was listening to every word through the open door. "You're showing signs of stress and exhaustion," Dr. Chen said, writing something on her tablet. "But physically, you're healthy. I'm going to prescribe something to help you sleep, just for a few nights. Your body needs rest to process trauma." "I don't want medication. I understand. But Mr. Russo was very clear that your health is a priority." She handed me a small bottle of pills. "Just one before bed. They're mild, non-addictive. They'll help." After she left, I stared at the pills, wondering if they were for my health or to keep me compliant. I set them aside, determined not to take them, but by nightfall, exhaustion was clawing at my mind so viciously that I reconsidered. Dante appeared at my door as twilight painted the windows purple. He'd changed into casual clothes, black jeans and a gray sweater that made him look almost human, almost. "Join me for dinner," he said. It wasn't a question. I followed him to a dining area in his suite, a table set for 2 with silver and crystal that caught the candlelight. The food appeared within minutes, brought by staff who moved like ghosts, there and gone without speaking, without making eye contact with me. "You've been researching me," Dante said, cutting into his steak with precise movements. "Marco informed me you spent several hours on the laptop. My appetite vanished. You said I had access to the internet." "You do. I didn't say it wasn't monitored." He took a bite, chewing thoughtfully. "What did you learn?" That you're a criminal. That people who cross you tend to disappear. That the FBI has been trying to arrest you for years. I met his eyes across the table. That I should be terrified of you. And are you? Terrified? I considered lying, but something about his expression told me he'd know. Yes. Good. He set down his fork. Fear keeps you smart. Smart keeps you alive. But Emma? He leaned forward slightly. I want you to understand something. The things you read about me, most of them are true. Killed people. Built an empire on violence and fear. But I've never hurt someone under my protection. I've never broken my word once given. And I've decided you're worth protecting, which means you're safer with me than anywhere else in this city, because I saved your life, because you're innocent. The word came out almost tender. In my world, that's rarer than diamonds. You work 3 jobs to pay your rent. You deliver pizzas in storms. You insist on completing your task even when armed men tell you to leave. That kind of genuine goodness, he shook his head. It deserves protection. I'm not good, I'm just poor. You're both. And you don't see the difference, which makes you extraordinary. He picked up his wine glass, swirling the deep red liquid. Tell me about your family. The change in subject threw me. Why? Because I want to know who you are beyond the frightened girl sleeping in my suite. I'm not a girl. I'm 24. Answer the question, Emma. There was that tone again, soft but absolute, the voice of someone accustomed to being obeyed. I found myself answering despite wanting to stay silent. My mother died when I was 16. Cancer. My father left before I was born. No siblings. I've been on my own for 8 years. The words came out flat, rehearsed from years of explaining my situation to landlords and loan officers. I put myself through community college working retail. Graduated with a degree in accounting that got me exactly nowhere. Now I work 3 jobs and still can't afford health insurance. That's my story. Not exactly extraordinary. Dante listened with that focused attention that made me feel like every word mattered. You survived. Built a life from nothing. That's more extraordinary than you think. It's just survival. It's not noble or special. It's both. He stood, moving around the table until he was standing beside my chair, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. You don't see yourself clearly, Emma. You think you're ordinary, forgettable, just another face in the crowd, but you're not. You have fire underneath all that exhaustion, stubbornness, pride. It's why you work yourself to death rather than ask for help. Why you delivered those pizzas despite the storm and my men trying to turn you away. His hand reached out, and I froze, but he only tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The same gesture from last night, gentle and possessive. I'm going to teach you to see yourself the way I see you, he said quietly, and then you'll understand why I can't let you go. My breath caught. Dante. Finish your dinner. Doctor's orders. You need to eat. He stepped back, releasing me from whatever spell his proximity had woven. Tomorrow, we'll discuss what comes next. But tonight, you rest. Take the pills Dr. Chen left. Sleep without nightmares if you can. He walked away before I could respond, disappearing into his bedroom and closing the door with quiet finality. I sat alone at the table, the food growing cold on my plate, my heart racing from the implications of his words. I'm going to teach you to see yourself the way I see you. What did he see when he looked at me? A debt to be repaid? A responsibility to be managed? Or something else? Something more dangerous that I didn't want to name. That night, I took one of Dr. Chen's pills. Not because Dante had told me to, but because I couldn't face another night staring at the ceiling, trapped in the endless loop of fear and confusion. I dreamed of photographs scattered like cards, of gunshots echoing through marble halls, of dark eyes watching me with an intensity that felt like being consumed. And underneath it all, a voice whispering words I couldn't quite hear, promises wrapped in threats, protection that felt like possession. When I woke, sunlight was streaming through the windows, and I could hear movement in Dante's room. The shower running, his voice speaking Italian into the phone, business conducted before most of the world was awake. I'd slept through the night for the first time in years, and somehow that terrified me more than anything else. 3 days passed in a strange suspension of reality. I woke each morning to find breakfast waiting in my sitting room, prepared by invisible hands while I slept. I spent my days reading from Dante's extensive library, watching the security monitors when Marco wasn't looking, learning the rhythms of the house. Staff moved through the halls like clockwork. Gardeners at dawn, housekeepers mid-morning, security rotations every 6 hours. Everything precise, controlled, deadly efficient. And every evening, Dante appeared at my door with the same invitation that wasn't really an invitation. Join me for dinner. We ate together in his suite, the conversation gradually shifting from stilted silence to something almost comfortable. He asked about my life before, the jobs I'd worked, the dreams I'd abandoned when my mother got sick, the small moments of joy I'd carved out of exhaustion. I found myself talking more than I intended, words spilling out like I'd been holding them in for years. Maybe I had been. In return, he told me carefully edited pieces of his own story. His father's death, the weight of an empire thrust on him too young, the constant calculation required to stay alive in a world where trust was currency and betrayal was commonplace. He never mentioned the violence explicitly, but it was there in the pauses, in the way his jaw would tighten when certain names came up, in the scars I'd noticed on his hands and forearms. He was teaching me his language without speaking it aloud. The language of power and danger, of decisions made in darkness, of lines crossed that could never be uncrossed. On the 4th morning, everything changed. I was drinking coffee in my sitting room when Dante burst through the door without knocking. His face was hard, eyes burning with something between rage and satisfaction. "We found him," he said. "Marcus. He's holed up in a warehouse in Red Hook with what's left of his organization. I'm going to end this today." My stomach dropped. "You're going to kill him. I'm going to make him answer for what he did. For Veronica, for Antonio, for trying to take what's mine." He moved closer, and I could see the violence barely contained beneath his surface. "And you're coming with me." "What? No, I'm not." "You're the only person who can identify Antonio Vitale with certainty. I need you there to confirm it's him before we proceed." His hand reached out, gripping my arm. Not painfully, but firmly enough that I understood this wasn't negotiable. "Marco and 4 others will surround you at all times. You'll be protected. But I need you there, Emma. I can't watch you kill someone. You won't have to watch." His voice softened slightly. "You'll confirm the identity and leave. That's all. But I need to know for certain before I act. Too many people have betrayed me already. I won't make a move based on assumptions." I wanted to refuse, wanted to lock myself in this room and pretend the world outside didn't exist. But looking into his eyes, I saw something I hadn't expected. He was asking, not commanding. Giving me a choice even though we both knew I didn't really have one. "Okay," I whispered. "I'll go." The relief that crossed his face was so brief I almost missed it. "Thank you." He released my arm, stepping back. "We leave in 20 minutes. Wear the dark clothes Teresa brought. Jeans, boots, the black jacket. Nothing that stands out." He left me alone to change, my hands shaking so badly I could barely button my jeans. This was real. This was happening. In less than an hour, I'd be standing in a warehouse watching Dante Russo confront the man who'd tried to kill him, the man he was going to murder. When I emerged, Marco was waiting with 4 other men, all dressed in tactical gear that made them look like a private military unit. Dante stood by the elevator in all black, a gun holster visible under his jacket. He looked at me once, his gaze traveling from my face down to my boots and back up, assessing. "Stay close to Marco. Do exactly what he says. If shooting starts, you hit the ground immediately. Understood?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. The drive to Red Hook took 40 minutes through morning traffic. I sat in the back of an SUV with tinted windows so dark I could barely see out, Dante in the front passenger seat speaking rapid Italian into his phone. Marco sat beside me, silent and alert, his hand resting on the weapon at his hip. The warehouse district was exactly what I'd imagined from movies, abandoned buildings and rusted shipping containers. The smell of salt water and decay, heavy in the air. Our convoy of 3 SUVs pulled up to a nondescript building with broken windows and graffiti-covered walls. But I could see the signs of occupation if I looked closely. Fresh tire tracks in the dirt. The glint of cameras hidden in the rubble. a door that looked rusted shut but probably wasn't. Dante exited the vehicle, and immediately a dozen men materialized from the other SUVs, forming a perimeter. Marco touched my arm. "Stay between us. Eyes forward. Don't speak unless Mr. Russo asks you a direct question." We moved toward the warehouse as a unit, Dante at the front with an authority that made even his own men keep their distance. He didn't knock on the door, just pushed it open like he owned the place, like he owned everything he touched. The interior was dim, lit by hanging work lights that cast harsh shadows, and there, in the center of the space, tied to a chair with blood on his face, was a man I recognized from the photographs. Marcus Vitale. He looked up as we entered, his eyes finding Dante with a mixture of defiance and fear. "Dante, I wondered when you'd find me. Did you really think you could hide?" Dante's voice was conversational, almost pleasant, which somehow made it more terrifying. "Did you think I wouldn't tear this city apart looking for you? It was worth a shot." Marcus spat blood onto the concrete floor. "You've gotten soft, Russo. Your father would never have let a woman distract him the way Veronica distracted you. Veronica's dead." Dante said it casually, watching Marcus's reaction. "Car accident. Very tragic." Of course, we both know it wasn't an accident. Marcus's jaw tightened. "I had nothing to do with that." "No? Then who did?" Dante circled the chair like a predator. "Who killed your brother Antonio after he tried to assassinate me? Who's been systematically eliminating everyone involved in this pathetic coup attempt?" "Antonio's dead." For the first time, genuine emotion flickered across Marcus's face. Grief, quickly masked by anger. "You killed my brother. I killed the man who tried to murder me in my own home. The man who was sleeping with my fiancée as part of your elaborate distraction." Dante stopped in front of Marcus, leaning down until they were eye level. "Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? That I'd be so consumed by Veronica's betrayal that I'd leave myself vulnerable? It should have worked." Marcus's voice was bitter. "You were supposed to be upstairs, alone, reviewing those photographs. My team was in position. It was perfect. It would have been." Dante straightened. "Except for one variable you didn't account for." He gestured, and Marco gently pushed me forward. "Emma, come here." My legs felt like water, but I moved forward until I stood beside Dante. Marcus's eyes found me, and I saw the moment he recognized me. Or rather, didn't recognize me. I was nobody to him, just another face. "This is Emma Reyes," Dante said, his hand coming to rest on the small of my back. The touch was possessive, claiming. "She delivered the pizzas that saved my life. She's the reason your plan failed, Marcus." A 24-year-old woman working 3 jobs just to survive. And she brought down your entire operation without even knowing it. Marcus stared at me with something like disbelief. Her? All this because of a pizza delivery girl? Because of someone with enough integrity to insist on doing her job properly, Dante corrected. "Something you know nothing about," he turned to me. "Emma, I need you to look at the photographs on my phone and confirm something for me." He pulled out his phone, swiping to an image. Antonio Vitale, the man I'd identified before. "Is this the man from the photographs with Veronica?" I looked at the screen, then at Marcus, understanding what Dante was really asking. Was I certain enough to condemn a man to death based on what I'd seen? "Yes," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "That's him." "You're sure?" "Yes." Dante pocketed his phone, satisfaction flickering across his features. "Thank you, Emma. Marco, take her outside." "No." The word came out before I could stop it. Both men turned to look at me, Dante with surprise, Marcus with curiosity. I want to hear it. I want to hear him admit what he did. Dante studied me for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Then he nodded slowly. "Stay behind me." He turned back to Marcus. "Tell me about the plan. All of it." "Who else was involved?" Marcus laughed, the sound wet and painful. "Why would I tell you anything? You're going to kill me either way." "True." Dante pulled his gun with casual ease, the movement so practiced it looked choreographed. "But I can make it quick, or I can make it last days. Your choice." The warehouse went silent except for Marcus's labored breathing. I could feel the tension in every man around us, weapons ready, waiting for the order. It was supposed to be simple, Marcus finally said. Veronica seduced Antonio, documented the affair. We'd send you the photos, wait for you to lose focus. My team would breach during your distraction, make it look like a crime of passion. Antonio would take the fall. I'd position myself as the grieving friend helping stabilize your organization. And within 6 months, everything you built would be mine and Veronica. She was supposed to disappear after. New identity, new life, set up somewhere tropical. Marcus's face twisted. I underestimated your reach. I didn't think you'd get to her so quickly. I didn't. Dante's voice was ice. Someone else did. Someone who wanted to tie up loose ends. Was it your father? Marcus's silence was answer enough. He killed her, I whispered, horror crawling up my spine. His own son's lover, he just— Welcome to my world, Emma. Dante didn't look at me, his eyes fixed on Marcus, where family means nothing compared to power, where betrayal is expected and loyalty is a weakness to exploit. He raised the gun, pointing it at Marcus's head. Any last words? Yeah. Marcus met his eyes without flinching. Your father was weak too. That's why he died. That's why you'll die. Someone always comes for the crown, Russo. Always. The gunshot was impossibly loud in the enclosed space. I flinched, turning away. But not before I saw Marcus's head snap back. Saw the blood, saw the moment life left his eyes. My stomach heaved, and I pressed my hand over my mouth, fighting the urge to vomit. Dante lowered the gun, holstering it with the same casual efficiency he'd drawn it. Clean this up, he told his men. Make it look like internal conflict. Let his father wonder if he's next. Then he was beside me, his hand on my elbow, steady and warm. Come on, let's get you out of here. Marco guided me outside while Dante stayed behind, issuing orders I couldn't hear over the ringing in my ears. The morning sun felt wrong, too bright, too normal for what had just happened. I stood by the SUV, gulping air, trying to process the fact that I'd just watched someone die, that Dante had killed him with less emotion than I'd shown firing a difficult customer at the diner. When he finally emerged, there was blood on his hands, literally. He wiped them on a cloth one of his men provided, the gesture perfunctory, like he was cleaning off dirt rather than evidence of murder. Get her home, he told Marco. I have other business to handle. No. I found my voice, though it shook. I'm not going back alone. You said I'd be safe with you. You killed a man in front of me. The least you can do is face me. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe. He dismissed his men with a gesture, and suddenly we were alone by the SUV, the warehouse looming behind us like a monument to violence. You wanted to hear his confession, Dante said. Why? Because I needed to know I wasn't complicit in murder without cause. I needed to know he actually did what you said he did. And now that you know, I looked at him, really looked at him, seeing the man beneath the monster everyone else saw, seeing the scars, the exhaustion, the weight of 1,000 impossible decisions. Now I know you're exactly who you said you were, not a good man, but a man who keeps his word. Does that make you feel better or worse? I don't know yet. I wrapped my arms around myself. But I know I can't go back to that room and pretend this didn't happen. I can't sit in your golden cage and eat your food and wear your clothes and forget that you're a killer. Then what do you want? The question hung between us like a challenge. I want honesty, I said finally. I want to know what happens next. Not what you think I want to hear. The truth. What's my future, Dante? What happens to the girl who accidentally saved the mob boss? He stepped closer, and I forced myself not to retreat. His hand came up, cupping my face with surprising gentleness, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone. The truth? His voice was low, intimate despite the violence we'd just left behind. The truth is, I've spent 4 days watching you, learning you, and I've realized something dangerous. What? I don't want to let you go. The words were raw, honest in a way I hadn't expected. Not because you're a witness, not because I owe you a debt, because in 4 days, you've become something I didn't know I was missing. Something real in a world built on lies. My breath caught. Dante, I'm not asking you to feel the same way. I'm not asking you for anything except time. His hand dropped from my face. Stay with me. Not as a prisoner, but as something else. Let me show you that I can be more than what you saw in that warehouse. That I can protect you, provide for you, give you a life where you don't have to work yourself to death just to survive. In exchange for what? Your presence, your honesty, your willingness to see me as more than a monster. He smiled, but it was edged with something like sadness. I know what I'm asking is insane. I know you have every reason to run from me. But I'm asking anyway because apparently, Emma Reyes, you've made me forget how to be practical. I should have said no, should have demanded he let me go. Find a new city, start over somewhere far from his world of blood and betrayal. But looking into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability he was offering me like a gift, I found myself hesitating. I need time to think. Take all the time you need. He opened the SUV door. But think about it in the car. We have somewhere else to be. Where? His smile turned almost boyish. Your apartment. I'm having your things moved to my house. And before you argue, he continued as I opened my mouth, your landlord already filed eviction papers. The building isn't safe, and you haven't paid rent in 2 months. So either your belongings get thrown on the street, or I rescue them. Your choice. He'd already made the decision for me, again. But somehow this time I didn't mind as much. I climbed into the SUV, and Dante settled beside me, close enough that our thighs touched. The proximity felt different now, less threatening, more intentional, like he was testing boundaries, seeing how much closeness I'd allow. As we drove back into the city, leaving the warehouse and Marcus Vitale's body behind, I realized something that should have terrified me. I was getting used to this. The violence, the control, the way Dante moved through the world like he owned it. I was adapting to his darkness, learning to see in shadows, and I wasn't sure if that made me strong or broken. My apartment building looked even more depressing in daylight than it had in the rain-soaked darkness of my memory. Cracked concrete steps, peeling paint on the door frames, windows patched with cardboard where glass should have been. I'd lived here for 18 months, and I'd never really seen it. Too exhausted, too focused on survival to notice how far I'd fallen. But seeing it through Dante's eyes, watching him take in the poverty with that unreadable expression, shame burned through me like acid. 3rd floor, I said quietly, leading him upstairs that creaked ominously under our combined weight. Marco and 2 other men followed at a distance, their presence making the narrow hallway feel claustrophobic. My door had a bright pink eviction notice taped to it, the words "Final Warning" stamped across the top in angry red letters. Dante tore it down without comment, crumpling it in his fist as I fumbled with my keys. The lock stuck. It always stuck. And I had to jiggle the key just right while pushing the door with my shoulder. The familiar frustration of it, the practiced dance I'd performed 1,000 times, suddenly felt humiliating with him watching. "Let me," Dante said, his hand covering mine on the key. His touch was warm, steady, and somehow the lock turned smoothly under his guidance. The door swung open onto my life. 1 room. That's all it was. A studio apartment with a kitchenette in the corner, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, and a mattress on the floor because I'd sold my bed frame 6 months ago to make rent. My few belongings were scattered around. Clothes folded on plastic bins that served as a dresser, textbooks from community college stacked in the corner, a single photo of my mother on the windowsill. It was clean, at least. I'd always kept it clean, scrubbing the floors on my hands and knees because I couldn't afford a mop, wiping down the walls to hide the water stains. But cleanliness couldn't disguise the crushing poverty of it, the way every surface screamed struggle and failure. Dante stood in the doorway, taking it all in with that focused intensity. I wanted to explain, to justify, to make excuses for why I'd let myself sink this low. But the words caught in my throat because what could I say? That I'd tried? That I'd worked myself sick trying to climb out of this hole? He could see that. He could see everything. "This is where you came home after delivering my pizzas," he said finally, his voice carefully neutral. "This is what you were protecting when you insisted on finishing your shift. It's not much, but it was mine." I moved to the plastic bins, starting to pull out clothes with shaking hands. I'll just grab a few things and Emma. He caught my wrist, stopping me mid-motion. Look at me. I didn't want to. Didn't want to see pity or disgust or whatever expression he was wearing. But his grip was gentle, insistent, and finally I turned to face him. You lived like this, he said softly. Worked 3 jobs, 60-hour weeks, and still couldn't afford basic necessities. And when I asked you what you wanted, you said freedom. Not money, not comfort, not revenge on the world that put you here. Just freedom. What's your point? My point is that you're extraordinary, and you don't even see it. His free hand came up, cupping my face the way he had outside the warehouse. Most people in your situation would have given up, taken shortcuts, made compromises, sold pieces of themselves for comfort. But you didn't. You kept fighting, kept working, kept your integrity intact even when it would have been easier to let it go. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has choices. You chose dignity over ease, every single day. That's not weakness, Emma. That's strength most people can't even imagine. Tears burned behind my eyes, and I blinked them back furiously. Don't. Don't make me into something I'm not just because you feel guilty for keeping me locked up. I don't feel guilty. His thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped despite my efforts. I feel grateful, and I feel determined to give you what you deserve. Not a cage, but a real life. One where you don't have to choose between food and rent, where your potential isn't wasted on survival. In exchange for what? I pulled away from his touch, wrapping my arms around myself. You keep saying you want my presence, my honesty. But what does that mean? What exactly are you asking from me? Dante was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes searching mine. Then he moved to the window, looking out at the view of brick walls and fire escapes that had been my only scenery for 18 months. When I was 26, he said, his voice low. My father told me something I've never forgotten. He said the hardest part of our world isn't the violence or the betrayal. It's the loneliness. Everyone wants something from you. Everyone has an angle, a scheme, a reason to smile while plotting your downfall. You can't trust anyone completely, can't let your guard down, can't show weakness or vulnerability because it will be used against you. He turned back to me, and I saw something raw in his expression. He was right. For 5 years since his death, I've been exactly what this world requires. Hard, calculating, merciless. I've built an empire on fear and respected only power, and I've been completely, utterly alone. His hands flexed at his sides like he wanted to reach for me but was holding himself back. Then you walked into my house soaking wet, insisting on delivering pizzas to a man who could have killed you without a second thought. And you looked at me like I was just another customer, not a monster. Like I was human. You are human, am I? The question was sincere, almost pleading. After what you saw today, after Marcus, after everything you've learned about me, do you still think that? I should have lied. Should have told him what he wanted to hear. Played the game, protected myself. But he'd asked for honesty, and something in me couldn't deny him that. I think you're someone who was forced into an impossible position and made choices most people couldn't make. I think you've done terrible things for reasons that probably seemed necessary at the time. I moved closer to him, drawn by something I didn't want to name. And I think underneath all that carefully constructed armor, you're just as lonely and tired as I am. His breath caught, barely perceptible, but I saw it. Saw the crack in his facade, the vulnerability he usually kept buried so deep no one could find it. What I'm asking from you, he said carefully, is a chance. Not forever, not even for certain. Just a chance to show you that I can be more than what everyone expects. That with you, I can remember what it's like to be human instead of just a weapon in expensive clothes. And if I say yes, if I agree to stay, not as a prisoner, but as whatever this is, I gestured between us, at the tension that had been building for days, the connection neither of us wanted to acknowledge. What happens when you get bored? When the novelty of my honesty wears off and you realize I'm just a poor girl with nothing to offer? Then I'll be the biggest fool who ever lived. He closed the distance between us in 2 steps, his hands framing my face with a gentleness that contradicted everything I knew about him. Emma, I've had everything money can buy. Beautiful women, luxury, power that makes kings look weak, and none of it, not one single moment of it, has made me feel as alive as 4 days of eating dinner with you, of watching you read my books and argue with me about philosophy, of seeing you look at me with fear and fascination, and something that might eventually become trust. I'm terrified of you. I know. His forehead rested against mine, our breath mingling in the small space between us. I'm terrified of you too, of what you make me want, what you make me feel. I've spent 5 years building walls, and you walk through them without even trying, Dante. His name was a whisper, a question, a surrender all at once. Say yes, he murmured against my skin. Stay with me. Let me give you a life worth living. Let me be more than the monster in your nightmares. I should have said no, should have demanded he let me go, find a new city, start over somewhere his darkness couldn't reach me. But looking into his eyes, seeing the desperate hope he was trying to hide, I realized something that changed everything. I didn't want to run. Against all logic, all self-preservation, all common sense, I wanted to stay. Wanted to see if the man beneath the monster was real. Wanted to know if I could be the person who reminded him he was human. Okay, I whispered. I'll stay. But on one condition. Anything. No more lies, no more half-truths or careful editing. If I'm going to be part of your world, I need to know what that world really is, all of it. Not just the pieces you think I can handle. Something like relief crossed his face, so profound it almost hurt to witness. Deal. No more lies. His hand slid from my face to my shoulders, grounding and possessive. Now let's get your things and get out of here. This place depresses me. Marco and his men packed up my life with efficient speed. Clothes, books, the photo of my mother, my few dishes and personal items all boxed and carried down to the SUVs waiting below. It took less than 20 minutes to erase 18 months of my existence from this building. Dante stood beside me as we watched them work, his hand resting on the small of my back in that gesture that had become familiar. Claiming me without words, announcing to anyone watching that I was under his protection now. What about my jobs? I asked, as we descended the stairs one final time. The diner, the pizza place, the weekend shifts at the grocery store. Handled. Teresa called your managers this morning with believable stories about family emergencies and relocations. You'll receive final paychecks, good references if you ever need them. He helped me into the SUV, sliding in beside me. Though if I have my way, you'll never need to deliver another pizza in your life. I like that job sometimes, I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. Meeting different people, driving through the city. It wasn't all bad. Then we'll find you something you like better. College courses, if you want to finish your degree. Work in one of my legitimate businesses. Or just time to figure out what you actually want instead of what survival demands. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. You have options now, Emma. That's what I'm offering you. Choice. The drive back to the mansion was quiet, comfortable in a way that shouldn't have been possible given everything that had happened. But somehow, sitting beside Dante with the city rolling past the tinted windows, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Safe. It was an illusion, probably, a temporary peace before the next storm. But I let myself sink into it anyway. Let myself imagine a future where I didn't have to count pennies or skip meals or work until my body gave out. The mansion looked different when we arrived. Less like a prison. More like a possibility. Dante walked me back to his suite, but this time he didn't leave me at the door to my room. Instead, he guided me to his sitting area, pouring 2 glasses of wine from a bottle that probably cost more than my yearly rent had been. To new beginnings, he said, raising his glass. I clinked mine against his, the crystal singing softly, to honesty. We drank, and then he set his glass down with careful deliberation. There's something you need to know about what happens next. My stomach tightened. The other condition you mentioned, Marcus Vitale's death will create a power vacuum. His father will retaliate. Other organizations will try to move in on his territory. It's going to get messy, possibly violent. His eyes held mine steadily. I'll protect you through all of it, but you need to understand. My world doesn't pause for grief or second thoughts. It keeps moving, and you'll be moving with it. I understand. Do you? He leaned forward, intensity radiating from him. Because I need you to be certain, Emma. Once you're truly part of this, there's no going back. You'll see things, know things, be connected to me in ways that make you complicit. The FBI, rival families, anyone who wants to hurt me, they'll see you as a target, as leverage. Your innocence won't protect you anymore. I stopped being innocent the moment I delivered those pizzas. I set down my own glass, meeting his intensity with my own. And I stopped being a victim the moment I decided to stay. So yes, Dante, I understand. I'm choosing this with my eyes open. The smile that crossed his face was devastating. Genuine joy mixed with possessive satisfaction. Then welcome to the family, Emma Reyes. He stood, offering me his hand, and I took it without hesitation. He pulled me to my feet and into his arms in one smooth motion, his embrace solid and warm and overwhelming. I could feel his heartbeat against my cheek, steady and strong, a reminder that beneath all the violence and power was just a man, a dangerous man, a complicated man, but still, just a man. I promise you, he murmured into my hair, I will make you happy. However long this lasts, whatever we become to each other, I will give you a life worth living. And I promise you, I replied, my arms tightening around him, I'll remind you every day that you're more than what they made you, that you're capable of gentleness and trust and everything else you think you lost. We stood like that for a long time, two broken people finding something like wholeness in each other's arms. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the room in shades of gold and amber. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, new tests of whatever this fragile thing between us was. But tonight, we had peace. We had honesty. We had each other. 3 months later, I stood in Dante's office watching him negotiate a truce with the Vitale family. Marcus's father had been persuaded that cooperation was more profitable than revenge. I'd learned the language of his world by then, understood the delicate balance of power and fear that kept everything functioning. I'd also discovered I had a talent for it, for reading people, for finding the leverage points that made them cooperate. Dante had made me his unofficial advisor, the person he consulted before major decisions, and I'd surprised us both by being good at it. You're smiling, Teresa said, appearing at my elbow with coffee. She'd become something like a friend, teaching me the intricacies of running Dante's household, protecting me from the staff who still didn't quite know what to make of the boss's live-in girlfriend, because that's what I was now, not a prisoner. Not a witness, but Dante Russo's partner in every sense that mattered. I'm thinking about how different my life is from 3 months ago, I admitted. How I went from delivering pizzas in a rainstorm to negotiating peace treaties. And are you happy? I considered the question carefully. Was I happy? Living in luxury while knowing it was built on violence, sleeping beside a man who'd killed more people than I could count, being complicit in a world that existed outside the law? Yes, I said finally, surprising myself with the certainty of it. I'm happy. That night, Dante and I lay in his enormous bed, our bed now, since I'd stopped pretending I needed my own room weeks ago, watching the city lights through the windows. I have something for you, he said, rolling onto his side to face me. He produced a small box from the nightstand, velvet and elegant. My heart stuttered. Dante, it's not what you think. Or maybe it is. I don't know anymore. He opened the box to reveal a ring. Not a diamond, but a deep red ruby set in platinum, surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light. In my family, rubies represent loyalty and protection. My father gave one to my mother when she agreed to truly join our world, to be his partner, instead of just his wife. I stared at the ring, understanding the weight of what he was offering. Are you asking me to marry you? I'm asking you to be my family, my partner, my equal. His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing across my cheekbone in that gesture that had become so familiar. I'm asking you to choose this life, this world me. Not because you're trapped, but because you want to. Because we make each other better, stronger, more human. Tears blurred my vision as I looked at this impossible man who'd somehow become my entire world. Yes, He slipped the ring onto my finger, a perfect fit, because of course he'd known my size. And then his mouth was on mine, kissing me with a passion that had been building for 3 months. We'd been careful until now, cautious about crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed. But tonight, with his ring on my finger and his promise between us, careful didn't matter anymore. We made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other's bodies the way we'd learned each other's minds. He was gentle with me, reverent, treating me like something precious instead of just another possession. And I gave myself to him completely, holding nothing back, trusting him with parts of myself I'd protected for years. Afterward, we lay tangled together, sweat-slicked and breathless, and I realized that the girl who'd delivered pizzas in the rain was gone. In her place was someone stronger, more complex, more alive. Someone who'd learned that monsters could love, that cages could become homes, and that sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was let yourself be saved. "I love you," Dante whispered against my hair. The words raw and honest. I didn't think I was capable of it anymore, but you proved me wrong about so many things. "I love you too," I replied, meaning it with every fiber of my being. "My beautiful, terrible, impossible man." He laughed, the sound warm and genuine, and pulled me closer. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm, sirens and traffic and lives being lived in countless small ways. But inside this room, in this moment, there was only us. 2 broken people who'd found something whole in each other, a delivery girl and a mob boss, bound by chance and choice and something that felt dangerously close to fate. And as I drifted off to sleep in his arms, the ruby ring heavy on my finger, I knew that I'd choose this life. Choose him. Every single time. 'Cause some cages were worth entering. Some monsters were worth loving.